Let's see, welcome to the Berlin Housing Trust meeting of Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. It is a little after 6, it's like 6:03. Our chair, Lisa, is away tonight, and so I will chair it, provided there's no objection to that. Do we have minutes to approve?
We have minutes. I sent them out, yes. Let me pull them up.
You sent them out, that meant I scanned them over, but
No, I posted.
That was the email with the multiple sets in
No,
it?
that was a different
That was
one.
a different set.
Because now, do we need to, last week I think she said that, or last meeting,
Right.
do we have to approve them?
we have to approve them. You can
Okay.
post them pre-approval.
Post it
To
pre-approval.
say, not yet approved,
Got
but
it.
we should still vote
Okay.
to approve them. So, we're looking what the minutes from, do we just have the one from August 23rd, or do we need to go back further? I don't know off the top of my head.
We could probably go, we haven't gone over them since probably June.
Okay,
Do you have them
so,
up on your computer there?
yeah, so
Okay.
June 28th, July 26th, and August 23rd.
Yep.
And they're all available and posted online.
Yep.
That's funny. I don't remember having a problem with them when I scanned them over.
Oh.
That's funny.
Okay, so from last meeting, which was August 23rd, we had guest speaker Carolyn Reed. She's
Yep.
the director at Habitat for Humanity. She presented Habitat for Humanity's new home build program, as well as their critical home repair program. New construction homes, she was explaining that they are net zero, or trying to be net zero, for energy efficiency. The building process takes about a year, and applicants they have to apply for a lottery, but they need to qualify through willingness to help build the home. They must be in need of a home and be at or below 60% AMI. Land for these new builds are typically tax title land or privately donated land, in her experience. Property that requires septic and well can and has been done through this program. For the critical home repair program and the home remodel program, this is specifically done through Habitat for Humanity. It's not something that the Housing Trust would fund, but we can promote it on our website, and residents are welcome to apply. There are income restrictions and program restrictions for that as well. And then, that was
Yep.
her, and we set the agenda for this meeting. So,
I want to make a motion to approve those minutes.
A second?
Is there any objections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
do we want to do July 26th? Should we approve those?
Sure.
Okay.
That gives me a second to get back to the current meeting agenda.
All right, so the minutes from July 26th, we had a Zoom presentation with Stephanie Peterson from the Metro West Collaboration Development. She explained who Metro West Collaborative Development is. She went over what the Metro West Collaborative Development does. And she gave a rundown on the current unofficial SHI and census data. And then after that, we did a question and answer with Stephanie. And we got an update on the Northbrook Village 2 affordability expiration date, which will be continued as affordable, I believe, indefinitely. And then we set our meeting agenda for August.
Right, the one note is we have to, the developer has to apply
Oh, okay.
to have that happen, but it's not a.
So Northbrook is not complete, it's just they have to apply for
Correct,
that?
they're going to expire, and then they can reapply to become an in perpetuity. But it's just a question if that's that's like, in 2027, we should send an email if we haven't heard anything,
Right, right.
kind of thing.
Okay,
So there's nothing immediate to do on that.
okay,
Right.
should I update those notes? Would that be helpful to have that updated?
Yeah,
The meeting-
probably.
The meeting minutes,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So.
And we can still approve it with those, to that
notes.
change.
So let me just.
And with that change, we're all okay with the minutes?
Mhm.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there one more to do, or is that?
Yep, we could do the one from June. That was June, wasn't it? That one was. Oh, that was July.
Oh, yeah. Remember June, we thought summer would be dry and.
It was a very long time ago.
I know.
I never saw that.
All right, so meeting minutes from June 28th. We reviewed and discussed the current SHI list, which is attached and on the website. We received an update on the housing coordinator position. At that time, we were still seeking a candidate.
Yeah,
We were scheduling our Zoom meeting with Stephanie, which we had on July 26th. We discussed types of funding and access, the differences between mitigation funds and CPA funds. And we set a plan for future guest speakers and topics and set our agenda for July.
great. Okay with those minutes? Any more discussion? All in
Sounds
favor
good.
of those, say aye.
Hi.
There. We've taken care of minutes.
Excellent.
I might just, I know you just walked in the door. Do you want to join us over here?
Sorry.
It's
I was
fine.
like trying to find a way.
But, yeah, I was gonna say, the building's obviously not, we know what room we always meet in, and, but,
Yeah. Because I think like the email said 27, and then I was like looking, and I was like,
Oh.
where's the whole?
right, right.
I think that's the building.
Town offices, sure. Welcome to town offices.
Just saying that.
To see, my name's Scott, I'm acting as chair today, because the chair had something come up suddenly and she can't make it tonight.
Mhm.
But I'm the one we've
Yeah,
talked to a
we've
little
emailed,
bit.
yeah.
I don't know if you folks want to do quick introductions.
I'm Kate Hendrick.
I'm Lauren Kukla.
I'm Beth Stores.
Yeah, and I'm with CMRPC, and I'm the regional housing coordinator.
And we happen to have Tim Wheeler from the Planning Commission behind us, who also does a lot with the CMRPC.
I think we've seen each other in
Yeah,
Zoom.
yes.
Yeah, we zoomed together the other night.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Finally seeing us in person.
I think we can, if I could just call on you the second you sit down, but a little bit more for everyone else, sort of your background.
Yes, sorry.
How you got here.
Yeah.
And I think we can then sort of have some conversations about like where you can potentially help out our housing trust get going, and things that we might think about we could use assistance on, and see where those overlap.
Okay, so, I come from, or my previous job was with Cambridge Housing Authority. And I basically did work from admin work to even like helping out with their planning and development, to even helping out with their tax credit units. Just kind of like the go-to person with everything in that. So that's basically what I did. Before then, I worked at the Connecticut Department of Housing. And from experience, I went to UMass Amherst, a degree in urban development. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me. And I kind of was reading through Berlin's plans, and you guys are doing great, by the way, with everything. You guys are very responsive, which I love that. So that's kind of a little bit about me, and yeah, I would be more than happy to see what you guys need assistance in. Yeah.
We're happy to have you.
Right? Does anyone want to sort of jump in some of the thoughts we might have where, staffing is, what, 4 hours a month we have or something like that, or
I
formally?
don't know.
There's a formal allocation of how much we're allowed. I'm sure it ebbs and flows a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
our sense was that each of the, what do you got, 5 towns, I guess, right?
Yeah, there's 5 towns. I
And-
don't think it's 4 hours
Okay.
a month. I think it's a little bit more than that. Maybe, I don't know. I think I'll check the
It's,
contract.
you know, I think the way Connor promoted it, it was gonna be the 4 or 5 hour range, given the amount of money that we had to put on the table.
Mhm.
And, you know, my sense was that this first year, we'd sort of all play it by ear and make some decisions about adequacy of that, and, you know. But you've got other stuff that you're attending to that's beyond the 5 towns to some degree, like Sutton and some of the,
No, I didn't do anything with that.
you didn't? Oh,
No.
They were talking about the fact that the migrant
Yes.
imports
Yeah.
into the region have fallen on your shoulders, is that true?
Well, not really on my shoulders. There's just a team, because I think that's like the regional
Yeah.
services. But like, for example, I know like Shrewsbury is like going through a flow of it, so
Yeah.
like that's a little bit there. But no, I don't think specifically like Sutton. I've just been kind of sitting in their meetings. But besides that, I think my primary role is to assist with the 5
The 5 towns, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
That's like why I'm brought up here.
Yep.
So I think once I get the works going with that, that would be my primary
Mhm.
role, more so than anything, yeah.
As you say, I don't want to monopolize everything. The thoughts that you folks have of where we can help, I think we're really trying to figure out sort of one, like where some of our early projects should be. I don't know if you've seen, I thought about 800,000 was the amount of money that sort of is available to us. Some of it is at our disposal, some of it would require town meeting approval. And that only includes Community Preservation Act money that's dedicated to housing. There's obviously the pool that can go to anything that we could pull from more if there was a project that was compelling. The timing for town meeting in May is actually fast approaching as well, because we have to have any capital requests in by the end of October if we're gonna put something in for May town meeting. And I don't know how close we are to even, like, we don't even know what projects we want to do, never mind like what that's gonna cost. And that's like one of our pools. We have 2 pools of money we could pull from if we needed to, even without town meeting approval. Because up to date, all we've done, we've had people come and present to us. You know, we've talked to Habitat and the Metro West Housing Partnership. But we haven't really settled down on like where we could start spending the money and what's the best use.
Which is a question I have taken from one of the Metro West seminar
Mhm.
from last week was, which was largely about how to form a housing trust,
Mhm.
and much of what has already been done, and emphasize strong municipal support, which we obviously have all those things, but one thing that I didn't know is, has the CPA money actually been allocated to the trust yet? Because I believe that has to be requested.
So what happens is that 10% of anything that's generated on an annual basis in town and through the match, we put an article on the warrant and transfer that annually into a bucket that's dedicated to community housing. The only way it comes out of that bucket is for an article to go on the town meeting warrant. But that money's protected and it's yours, or anybody else that wants to apply for community housing. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be driven by the trust. And that's 200,000 or so probably now
Right.
at this stage. And then as Scott said, there's additional money in a pool for CPA that could be utilized for projects if, you know, you really had something that was on a grander scale.
So that's.
So that money's there, you know, in the Spectrum News got a hold of the whole thing about, you know, underutilization of CPA money by communities and all that sort of thing. Well, in our case, we were only a couple years old, so it's not as though, you know, we've been sitting on a pile of money and haven't used it. The trust is here now, and I think you're gonna come up with a lot of good ideas, but what some towns do, for instance Hudson, is they take that 10% annually and instead of putting it in a CPA bucket for community housing that's held by CPA, they move it almost immediately out into the hands of the housing trust,
Right,
but with no designated or specified use.
right.
So Stuart, who we work with at the consortium for CPA, feels that transparency is really important, and that rather than just turning over, you know, 50,000 a year or whatever to the housing trust with no sense of how it's going to be utilized is problematic in his mind, because the transparency disappears. So what he suggested, and what a lot of towns, so Stuart's with the with the Community Preservation Act consortium, and he's working out of Boston, and there's a couple people on the staff there that we can call anytime, and you guys could call too if you've got housing questions that, you know, is this appropriate to utilize CPA money, that sort of thing. So he says the ideal thing from his mind is that the housing trust would create initiatives that you would like to see funded. For instance, first-time home buyer or rental assistance or whatever. And, you know, as you work with Jasifa, I think, you know, she may very well come in and say, here's what I mean, if you could say, go do some research, see what other small towns are doing, and then, you know, what buckets could we create that you then would maintain, but the money from CPA would be addressed specifically for that use, and it could be put into your hands so you could use it immediately instead of having to wait for a town meeting. So
initiatives,
CPA
because that
is,
takes away the nimbleness of having to go, of the whole purpose of what.
it gives you nimbleness in that you have the money in your hands, but it doesn't give you carte blanche. I mean, you've really,
Right.
you're sort of limited to what we assign it for. And so CPA is sort of throwing the ideas around, how do we want to address this? And I think at some point, now that Jasifa's here and you know, you guys can begin to talk internally about this, then CPA would like to meet with you and talk about that action, whether there are specific initiatives that you'd like to see funded. And it could be multiple initiatives. I mean, you could say we want to create several different funds that would then be available for us to draw on.
Okay, so then the CPA reserves them for those initiatives, and then,
No, we have a town meeting, the town meeting would say, $150,000 is gonna be turned over to the housing trust for the purposes of first-time home buyer assistance. And then that money would be put into an account that June would maintain, and June probably isn't gonna get too excited about a bunch of additional accounts, but nonetheless, it's a transparent way for everybody in town that's voting for CPA money to be transferred to understand how it's gonna be utilized.
well, it's guided by the housing production plan and the other things that are already put in place. So there is guidance
Yep.
already.
Yeah,
So is that something we should talk about for town meeting, is having these initiatives? Because we've already met with Habitat, and they are very eager to start.
Yeah.
And for us to find them.
Did we connect tax title properties with them? Because I know we were gonna give them a list and they were
We
gonna
were.
look
I
and see
did
if
get
there
the
was
list from
anything.
the town. I don't think I've got it over to Habitat, because the list included like this building and other things that.
I don't know.
I was trying to find a way to remove from that
It's
easily,
still
like,
leaking?
and dedicated to conservation. So like, horseshoe pond, they're not
Right.
gonna do,
Yeah.
and
Right.
other stuff. And so
Yeah.
I've tried to narrow it down.
If,
Um,
I'd say if you struggle with a list of tax title properties, get in touch with Dennis Farabee, because he maintained, I thought, a pretty tight list, 'cause-
No, it is a very tight list, and it was very well dedicated, it has a lot of detail,
And-
it's like,
and-
but
but-
which ones are, but which ones are available for, like, okay.
But we specifically, when we would meet
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Dennis, we would say, this one should go to conservation,
Right.
but this one should be held by the town, because it might very well be a good
Yeah,
candidate for a habitat project or a
okay,
housing project.
I would ask him.
I'm not, yes, but I don't know that we could really realistically figure that out by the end of October.
I kind of agree. And that's sad because,
What are the chances we'll need a special meeting
Well,
next year?
Next year, probably. I mean, they try to
Okay.
do one, they think about doing one in the fall most years.
Most
But
years.
This year's, the big driver for one this fall was a potential river bridge adjustment, and they're just not like ready with it at this point. And so instead of just dangling, select board just the last meeting decided we're just not gonna have one between now and May.
Right, so potentially it's not waiting a year, it's waiting
Right.
6 months, but I feel like we
Well,
need to do our mission work and our objectives.
And you need,
And
right,
then you-
and you need town meeting for the CPA money, you need town meeting if there's gonna be a transfer of any title of land to somewhere else. But to use some of the money that's in mitigation from Solomon Pond, or in the pool of money that we got from the selling of 40Bs to for the non-income restricted, those we could spend just by votes of our own. I would still do the same way. I would almost, if we did a first-time home buyer grant program, I would almost do a motion here, ask June if she could set it up for, again, that transparency, so someone later on says, what happened to this 300,000? And we're like, oh, 300,000 transferred here to this, and here's the people who got the
Right.
money for it.
And-
Just so it's just really easy to prove that the money went to where it was supposed to go.
And,
well, the
And you're up.
CPA always reports annually through the CP3 anyhow, right? Where everything is spent. So it is
Well-
transparent, it's just not,
It'd be different though, because the
It's already
CPA would not
allocated.
say,
CPA
the CPA money might just say it got transferred to the housing trust. It wouldn't actually say what happened to it after that. And so I think it lets it.
but it would probably say to the housing trust for the
For-
purpose of,
right.
you know, being
First-time home buyer
utilized.
programs, yeah.
But what I'd say is that the October date, I wouldn't worry about it yet, because you're talking about capital expenses for your October.
Right, right.
And CPA wants proposals by the 1st of November. But you can give us a tentative proposal that says, and this is where I think Josefa comes in. I mean,
Right.
I hope I'm saying your name right. am I?
Yes, you are.
So, I just keep saying it, I think, I wonder. So if you said to Josefa, look at a few small towns, give us 2 or 3 initiatives that right off the bat are the most useful to small towns, and then say, okay, let's decide, you know, do we wanna fund those so we've got, you know, $50,000 or $100,000 in those accounts? Cause that would travel a long way if you thought about it for a first-time home buyer. I mean, you know, you'd be able to help, I would think, a number of different people. But then you could hand that to CPA by the 1st of November
Mhm.
and say, here are 2 initiatives, these are motions that we'd like to have on the warrant for the annual town meeting in May. And we don't have to fine tune those, because you're not gonna
Right.
close the warrant until February.
Yeah, we're not closing warrant in February. We won't need exact
So
wording
we
of the
can
warrant
workshop it.
until like
Okay, that would give us
early
time.
March. And so it could be that by our October meeting, we would like to do, we're using first-time home buyer as our sort of example, it could be something about, we would like something, and we think the ballpark's going to be about X big.
Mhm.
But we could still, we'd have some time to make it a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. We can't say we're looking at 100,000 and ask for 6 million, you know. And the reverse can, you can ask for 100,000, and as we get into it, discover that it's a little more complicated, and up until mid-February, just pull it at a certain point, saying,
Yeah.
look, it's just not ready for now, we're gonna go in 6 months. And so we probably should, at least next month's meeting, with a little bit more direction on your end and on our part, potentially have something ready to think they'll have something for the May meeting, and again, for CPA funding.
Because we're gonna put one article in
Yep.
to utilize housing money to help. See, the first year, Josephus salary's covered by a grant, and then the second and the third year is covered through the commitment of the 5 towns. And we said we'd participate for 2 more years after the initial
Right.
year. And we said at the CPA level that we'd commit $10,000, and that would be utilized for housing coordinator. And then the planning board agreed that it would pull some of the additional money out of mitigation for housing to cover the additional cost on an annual basis for those 2 years. And then we gotta begin to think about, what are we gonna do on a regular basis? You decide, this is a relationship that makes a lot of sense. 4 or 5 hours a month really is perfect. We wanna continue this on into the future, and we look at CPA for funding for a significant amount of that on a regular basis. So we'll have one article that'll address that, but if you guys had another couple articles that you wanted
Yeah.
to think about for funding different initiatives,
And as
that'd
of,
be great.
as of July 7th, before fiscal year '24 annual town meeting stuff has been posted, we had $193,095 in CPA funding dedicated to housing.
See, that's the only money that that should potentially run through town meeting.
Right, right.
Mm.
But it's also the pool of money that, if we had a $250,000 project, just because we have $193,000 doesn't mean that we couldn't ask for $50,000 from the general fund. Because it's only 40% is dedicated to the 10% funds, and the other 60% can go to any one of those. It flux between. We've spent a lot of this town money on conservation at this point. And so, an argument could be made that for recreation, historical, or actually historical's gotten a chunk too,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
housing,
the-
it sort of is due from some of that extra
Yeah.
money.
So there's 3 accounts.
Oh, sorry, 3,
Rec
sorry.
and conservation are the same, but.
Okay.
So there's 30% that's taken away off the top, and 5% can go for admin, and then the rest is there and available. Because we utilized some of the money to get matches,
Mhm.
850,000
Oh, yeah.
came back.
Yeah.
So all the money that we put into Horseshoe Pond essentially
Came back, yeah.
came back to CPA. So, and they don't have any projects in the wind right now, so CPA's pretty well funded, and if you had some big initiative, that would.
It feels like as if, I don't know how fast Habitat could move.
Right.
So I felt like we had a lot of energy and
Yeah.
excitement around that possibility,
Yeah.
and that would be a huge splash and a
Yeah.
very big thing
Yeah.
for us to
Yeah.
undertake as a first thing to do.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, if we happen to fall in this
Yeah.
space where conservation doesn't have a big project underway and that we aren't competing against a bunch
Right.
of other things,
Right.
if we have the opportunity,
Yeah.
to get money to use for something
Yeah.
like this, we should
mean-
keep that in mind, that potentially it's a possibility
Right.
and they may not be able to move fast enough for us to know on any kind of
No,
timeline.
but our warrant article could even just be, $100,000 to develop or rehab a building and house for a first-time home buyer. We wouldn't have to
Wouldn't have to name Habitat.
Habitat for Humanity, because in some ways we might have to do an RFP that they respond to, even though they're likely the only ones to respond to it. But there's other developers in town who with some money might say, okay, we would build a single-family 40B place, Rhodes Construction's done a lot in town. I don't know, single-family homes has not been his style, but who knows?
I guess, which, of course, all of that goes back to the housing production plan.
Right.
If we want single family and,
Right, right.
what is our,
Yeah.
there are too many questions
Right.
still.
Right,
Well, I think our job is gonna speed up quite a bit
Right.
once the housing production plan goes through.
Did it go through?
because
It is not, it
Once-
needs select board approval.
it's
Okay.
still
So, yeah.
in draft,
So
but
the-
once the zoning is opened up to that degree,
Right.
we're gonna have to keep up with the affordable. Right now, we're in a good place,
Mhm.
but with those changes, we're gonna have a much bigger job.
Yeah. Yes, why, hopefully
So,
with us and
it-
planning,
while it-
we'll make sure there's affordability in many of the projects that go on in town. But yeah,
It leans to be geared towards affordable, it
Yeah.
actually creates, some friction there in terms of it will, with more housing in general,
Mhm.
and the market will catch up quickly with that, then we're going to have to be creating a lot more affordable at the same
Right.
time.
If we fall back on the historical numbers before 40B came in, and we don't approve any more big housing, well, I shouldn't say that. If we fall back on our historical numbers, though, you're gonna see 15 to 20 single-family homes built on an annual basis. And that's it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
And so if we look at the last 50 years, that's essentially what happens in Berlin.
But we've had the same zoning since the highways have been built. Now with those changes,
But see, there's.
I think things are gonna be very
The
different.
zoning hasn't changed, though. The housing production plan just outlines a series of goals and aspirations, but it doesn't modify any zoning. It still leaves open the possibility of someone coming in with a project, for instance, like a senior residential project with 60 units or whatever, but that includes an affordable component that's over the 10%, so actually they're required to build 15. So you gain on your numbers, you stay above the 10% and you actually add a few more. So if there are projects that are large scale, they'll have to comply with that 15% requirement because of the inclusionary zoning section of the zoning bylaw. And if the problem ends up being the 15 to 20 single-family units, but right now, we're probably 40 units over in terms of the SHI of where we need to be. We've got 204 and we probably got, I mean, actually right now, I don't think the state recognizes much more than, 1,390 or 1,400 housing units?
Yeah.
So that means we're 60 over, which isn't really accurate, because not everything that's on the ground right now is included in the SHI, but it won't be included till 2030 now. So you could build, 300 additional housing units before you began to compromise your 10%, because you're 40 over. So you've got time. I think you've got a lot of time. You just need to use your imaginations and, go for the opportunities with Habitat and stuff like that. And make sure that if we build any big projects that, they live up to the 15%. The planning board right now is looking at, there's some people coming in saying they wanna look at small scale housing units, workforce housing, cottage housing. And in one case, they're talking about a template where they build to rent instead of build to sell, but they're 900 to 1,600 square foot units, and they'd be, maybe 60 or so in a project. But in that case, if they were rental and they had an affordable component that probably was 25%, they'd all count as affordable, because they'd be rental. So, that's the type of thing the planning board's playing
Yeah.
around with, which we'd like to talk to you guys about, because we
Yeah.
think you know, again, with Jasifa and your heads all pooled around these issues, it would help us with the zoning issues that might come up with cottage housing or workforce housing
Well, yeah,
overlay district.
changing, density is changing zoning, so that's part of what the housing production plan is. But the list of what counts right now, that brings me
Mhm.
up to the updated SHI list, is Highland Bridge isn't counted yet.
Right,
Right.
So this is the form to do it. Who handles that?
Jasifa.
Oh, I do, okay.
I would say
No.
that's,
I thought,
mean,
Get her to
Midwest
help.
Housing Partnership keeps our SHI inventory.
they do, but to me, it seems like that there ought to be a transfer of responsibility. The group that's maintaining it for you
Right,
is the Assabet, well, the
Right.
Metro West Consortium working with the Assabet Regional Housing Consortium. So
They will help with it.
Stephanie will manage it, and I'd say, you know, it's an ideal situation for Jasifa to get to know all the players. I mean, she can talk to Stephanie about what role they want to, she can talk to Eloise about what the housing partnership's done in the past. Because planning board was talking about it last night, and we said, you know, this is an ideal opportunity for you guys to sort of talk about strategy. Where does it make the most sense for it to be driven, you know?
Mhm. Well,
If you've got Jasifa, and she's got those connections with those other groups, you know, may very well just be filling out the paperwork and moving through the process in a,
and
deliberate
Metro West
fashion.
did say they would help with this
Yeah.
process, but I don't know if somebody's already handling it or, so.
Sure.
This, this is the 2-page form,
right.
and then this is our
Yeah, I've seen.
current housing list.
Right.
And then these 10 units
Are gonna be the ones that are.
need to
gonna be-
somehow
Okay,
Get on
so
it.
I guess I'll
make
like,
it to that.
maybe talk to Connor and figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go from
And-
there.
and
And
Stephanie
Eloise
over at-
may know.
and Stephanie and Eloise, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they're from the Metro West Housing
So
Consortium.
Stephanie is with the Metro West Housing Group, Eloise is with the
Housing partnership.
housing partnership that is here in Berlin, right? Yes.
And also the town clerk.
And she's also our town clerk, yes.
Okay, and she's with, the housing partnership.
Right,
But again, I think it's ideal for Jasifa to brainstorm with
Yeah.
all of you and Eloise about what is the housing partnership's role now legally, you know?
Yeah.
What are they responsible for?
Yeah.
And then, as you work out, my sense was that there were procedures and guidelines and all that housing trusts operate with that we didn't include in it specifically in the language that it created the trust. So it seems like if you guys work through that process, you know, that'll help inform where all these different responsibilities fall.
well, and as a setup for the email I have in front of me, one of the things that came up at the select board meeting, actually not by me, but was that one of the roles could help is that there are several housing players in the small town of Berlin, and both what are we each doing now, what should we be doing slightly differently when it comes to responsibilities, are all the little groups still sort of needed, but also potentially to be a spot where if you have a housing question in Berlin, you know, they might call you, and you know enough, they're like, well, that's a housing partnership one, that's a housing trust
Just
one,
kinda
that's a
like-
planning board one,
Kinda
that's
like
a,
to
yeah.
direct them.
You know, our own questions, you know, there were at least one and soon to be two 40Bs for sale in town, and how do we make sure that we don't lose them?
Mhm.
One of them has been on the market for almost a year now at this point, and so technically could be sold as a non-40B.
Mhm.
I don't think there's a pressure at the moment to do it. I think actually the latest round of advertising has gotten several applicants, and so whether or not one of them can make it through the strange 40B process, where you have to make enough money to be able to have a perfect credit score and a down payment, but not so much money that you don't qualify for a 40B, and lose unit 9 is about to be put on the market.
Yeah.
She's openly saying that, so I don't think I'm saying anything out of.
No, she
Right.
announced that.
Right, and she's put it on social media, so there's not a formal real estate listing yet, but 9 Village Lane's about to be on the market as a 40B as well.
Mhm.
9 Village.
Yes.
What was the,
29 Village Lane was the other,
thank you.
yes.
And what's the status on that?
Last I heard that there were several interested parties, but I have not heard much more beyond that. There's been some people touring it. I thought someone who said that they have qualified for 40B and much of the paperwork and have been looking for a unit was one of them. But, you know, out of privacy stuff, no one's telling me like, this is so-and-so and this is their name and.
Because I mean, obviously, if we can get multiple people
Right,
if we can,
right.
if we can come up with anybody,
And-
and multiple anybody's, I think
Right.
it would be awesome.
So maybe like, also help out with like, maybe like an advertisement aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
Maybe to try to get out.
Because I didn't realize 29 was actually on the market.
Well, it's been on the market for a while, but
Fancy.
there's legal messiness that has made it not easy to actually sell, and I think that has been clarified enough where it is,
Sellable at this point?
yes.
I've often wondered if one of the pools of money that you'd want to maintain would be in those situations where we were really gonna lose a 40B unit, and that you could come to the rescue
And buy it.
and then hold it, but work actively to flip it.
Mhm.
So you have that capacity
Mhm.
to own real estate, that's written into your guidelines. I mean, you're enabling legislation, so.
Quick question, sorry, this, Highland Ridge, that's not included in the SHI, that has to be included in.
Correct.
Right, that's,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
got it.
Via that form,
Okay,
with
got it.
all that information that I don't know
Sounds
where you
good.
get.
The 2 units we're talking about fall in the Surrey Hill LLC list.
Which is also incorrect.
Oh.
And how do we go about getting the other ones, the ones removed? Because there's still some of the old ones on there
We don't.
that we lost.
We don't.
Well,
When they
We
do,
let somebody else worry about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like that answer.
in 2030, when they validate everything next.
Mm.
That means
So sorry,
if somebody wants to find a way to take them from us, let them try.
Well-
That's- Right?
Yeah, I think that feels like a very interesting path to, with your knowledge, figuring out what are some potential options for us in terms of structuring a pool of money that would allow us to intervene when
Mhm.
when a 40B is about to be converted to a
'Cause-
market rate.
And you might very well decide that you want to identify those units at, Sawyer Hill LLC and put some money aside, and if they become available at some point, you get them back on the SHI.
Right.
Yeah.
In some respects, both units could probably use a little bit of time between owners to make them sort of
They
a
would show
good
better.
place for the next person.
Oh, yeah, vacated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they're not alone in those type of units where just a chance to, again, so the new owner doesn't immediately jump in who doesn't have a lot of resources because to qualify for it, you can't and need to paint every surface and replace a, cracked kitchen counter if there was one,
Yeah.
or an appliance refresh.
What our
'cause-
options are in terms of either providing funding
Right.
for somebody who comes into a 40B that may not have been able to be maintained.
Right. Right.
Anywhere in town, or specifically if we were to own a unit, what we can
Yeah,
do.
Right. Because, I don't know those 2 units, I've not been in either of those at Surrey Hill in forever, but, they're 10 years old, and so assume that the appliances have not been replaced, that means it's a 10-year-old fridge and a 10-year-old dishwasher, and
Yeah.
they don't have washers and dryers, but I
Are
mean.
these rental units?
No,
Or
these are,
They're for sale?
they're for sale, yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so first time home buyer.
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And those 40Bs all had I'll have that horrific cream colored carpet in there, and you
Right.
know a 10-year-old cream colored carpet is,
Yeah.
like, that's just a
That's
health
right.
hazard at this point.
Maybe,
That's
yeah,
right.
to make it like a pleasable kind of like,
Right.
to put money maybe towards renovation so that can sell
Yeah,
faster.
be it either we own it for a short period of time and do it, or a grant to the next person who's coming in, because again, the new person coming in is not necessarily gonna have the resources
Yeah.
to carpet the whole living room area, even though it's 10-year-old carpeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they knew that, it also might sell better, because
Yeah.
there could also be people who are like, well, I can afford my mortgage, I can get the 41B, but I don't have the $3,000 it will take to
Yeah.
Right.
make this livable for me.
And if they have a choice of multiple 40Bs, we'd like
Right.
them to choose ours.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
We all know, but Surrey Hill is a co-housing community, and so it is,
I kind of figured.
yeah.
It's higher density than
Right.
anything, obviously, except like the apartments in town.
Mhm.
Highest density, single, they're duplexes and
Triplexes,
triplexes,
yeah.
yes. And
Duplexes
So
are
are
the
the
year-round
two on the
triplex.
market, or are they coming on the market?
one is coming.
One is on the market, one will be on the market soon.
Okay.
The legal issues stopping it from being on the market clarified on Monday, and the people who are living there now are posting on social media that the real estate agent listing is not available yet, but
Yeah,
it is coming soon, so let us know. And so, and it has been known, because of co-housing community, we know what's generally going on, is that one of the reasons, I think one of the big pushes for 29 and finding people is knowing that anybody, if we got, quote, too many people interested in 29, officially 29 is a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and 9 is a 3-bedroom.
So like,
But the
if
total
people
numbers
are
were-
interested in 29, they
Right.
may be coming, because 9
right.
is coming in the market,
Right,
so
right.
yeah,
Yep.
got it.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right, making sure we have some money, because I thought they were both under $200,000 for either one of them.
Right.
Thought 29 was 192, and I thought they were looking at 210 for.
I don't know what the rules are about how they can price that.
Yeah, I know there's
Your
some
mail?
bureaucracy that sets it, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I know the one beds in Camelot were at like 149 the last time one of those flipped.
Are they just under like, kind of like affordable housing regulations and restrictions?
Yeah, they're
Standard-
40B.
standard 40B.
Standard
Got it,
40B
got it,
regulations,
okay.
yep.
There were, that development has lost 2 40Bs. We were unable, years of looking, were unable to find people to move in, like, new.
New, yeah.
Like, not even like, somebody had lived there and it looked like it or anything. We couldn't find people to live there, and those went to auction and fell out of the 40B pool. And so,
But
That's
they're,
right.
they're still on the SHI.
Right,
So, to me, it would be an interesting exercise to see if you could see what the differential is today and
right.
contemplate capturing some of those and bringing them back. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you compare that to the creation of,
Right.
housing with
right,
Habitat
the cost
or any of
to,
those.
the cost to build,
Right.
yeah. But of course, the question is
The differential might be
Yeah,
substantially
about 200,000.
tough.
That was-
So,
yeah.
Because Yana looked at putting hers on the market, and so she announced a price, and she ended up deciding not to sell or move, but
Yeah.
that, that's a 2-bedroom 40B, and she was looking at, I thought, a little over 420 for it. So it'd be a $200,000 differential, but you can't build something for 200,000 necessarily, and so you might, you could offer to someone to flip it back to 40B.
It's interesting, because of course, the math for people living
Right.
in those homes, right, the condo fees are an issue
Right,
at Sawyer Hill, because
right,
it's a condominium complex.
right, and we do a lot.
Yeah,
I say we like I still live there, but.
you're still, you can't have our actual, I say we when I'm talking about Mosaic, and I haven't lived there for more than a decade, right, so. Yeah. So, the idea of attempting to recapture
Yeah,
properties is interesting.
yeah. So it wouldn't have to be even that particular unit.
Right.
It could be, that there's other unit there. It doesn't even have to be in the eco-village. It could be a building somewhere in town
That's
that
right.
is on the market that there's a right differential that we would put money into to move it into 40B.
And, you
It'd have
know,
to be
the
a small,
CPA looked seriously at 72 Carter
You
and
did?
tried to figure out the strategy that would allow us to pick that up, but
right,
we didn't, you know, we would have consumed the entirety of your CPA money that's in
Right.
those buckets. So we thought, this is getting too complex. But there again, you know, that's
right,
figuring out proactively what the strategy would be, so you'd know exactly what steps you'd have to take and in what order, and what dollar amount you'd wanna throw at the project. I mean, Habitat would work with you, I think, from what Carolyn, right? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
when I talked to her about it, the 72 Carter one, you know, it was, you know, she was hoping that they could create an additional vacant lot on the parcel, and so they'd have the saleable unit and a vacant lot that they could put maybe a duplex on. Well, you know, one of the things that got talked about in the housing production plan was, you know, types of housing that people would be interested in. Berlin duplexes still fall fairly low on the scale, but I think that's an educational issue. And I think, again,
yeah,
the trust might very well look at what Northboro's done with duplexes, and they tuck them in and you don't even know they're there and they look great, and, you know, is there harm? No. I mean, it seems like that's a way to capture affordable units in a fairly short order. So, you know, fun stuff.
Habitat, I think that she said they've changed their format a bit, so that they're more willing to look at a single family project
Mhm.
on its own with private well and septic, which they hadn't been doing either.
Yeah.
So she seemed very excited about it.
Because that pleased me when I talked to her, yeah, and because that's what I was saying, what about towns without water and sewer? She said,
Right.
no, we're going after those now, and I said,
Right.
right.
that's why you wanna talk to us then, because,
So,
Because building shared septic is not fun.
yeah.
I don't
Building
even-
it's fine, maintaining it.
Do we allow that? Really? We are allowing that now, aren't we?
No, but there's several condo complexes or townhome complexes in Berlin that have a shared sort of septic. But the state rules are that, you know, at a certain point, like if it's over, I think 3 or 4 people, you have to do the same testing. It's like City of Worcester
public.
has to do it, it becomes public.
Yeah.
And so there's no distinction between, you know, something that 10 houses are using and something that 100,000 houses are using when it comes to daily testing and chemicals and.
Which might be, as we talk about things we can do,
Right.
or things that don't really cost us money.
Right.
But, you know, that's an issue
Mhm.
in terms, that affects housing. And so legislatively,
Right.
that's a place.
And affects not just like, I mean, the rents over at Riverbridge are, because they have to go through all that same stuff too. And if
Mhm.
their costs went down by 60 or 70,000, you would think that would at least slow the rate. I'm sure they wouldn't immediately give it back to the tenants, but it might slow the rate
Slow
of
the rate of
increase
increase.
of rents over there. At not much of a sacrifice. And I know we've been, again, all over the place tonight, and by next month, if we're gonna do something for town meeting and CPA, we have to start narrowing down, like, you know, a Habitat project or a first-time home buyer project, or both, or.
I know it
something
seems
different.
complicated,
Right.
but she seemed very excited about
she did.
working with
Yeah,
us.
Yeah.
if we've got a
So,
parcel
and
that's viable.
Like Beth said, if there is a window of opportunity,
Right.
it may be complex, but
Well, and I think
We'll learn a
it's-
lot.
we're here for something. We are here to
If you-
do
if you look at the-
something.
If you look at the timeline though, she had a dollar amount, like, I don't remember what it is, but she
I
said
wanna
like.
say it was 200, but
Right, I
that
thought
might
she had
not
like
be right. I was
about a
just
dollar
looking-
amount for a project,
Right.
which would be enough to get our process started, because in October, we could say, we want to set, you know, ask CPA for $200,000 for a developer to come in and renovate you know, we could even make it so relevant, because we haven't found the parcel yet, a 1 to 4 unit project, likely Habitat, but it would be an open bid.
The style of Habitat for Humanity.
Right. And that gives us
perhaps
time from November to like, again, January to early February to actually find a potential lot, especially if it's tax title. because 72 Carter wasn't tax title, it was an opportunity from someone who's getting ready to sell in town. And so I think we'd try to write the article so it could be tax title, but it could be opportunistic. And then hope that by the time we get to town meeting, if there's enough structure to it and, you know, that we can get a positive vote at the floor of town meeting. And again, we've seen town meeting. Yeah, if we're in favor, the CPA has voted in favor, the select board and FinCom end up in favor. We've been to enough town meetings and we've seen some things that look like slam dunks get torpedoed, but that the chances of it go down a lot.
Well, I think Habitat for Humanity, if we can
Right.
tout their format and style and perhaps partnership, they're very
Right.
well known.
Yeah.
So, and I think they have a lot of goodwill.
Right.
And if we stress that it's money that's already
Yeah.
been
Okay.
paid
Yeah.
and allocated, that it's just actually
We-
using this money, which
Right.
Doesn't cost you anything.
some
we're just
sources
moving it.
say has just been sitting for too
Right.
long,
Yeah.
that we're actually getting busy and doing something. I
Right.
don't see that being an
Because
issue.
we could, again, without an open bid for folks, but we could say that we want a project where there's sweat equity by the potential owner to go into it, which will be the type of town Berlin is. The idea that you're putting your own sweat equity into something will be
Popular.
popular.
Yeah.
Because we're a lot of like, get it done sort of folks, so.
Yeah, she said the average cost of the homes that they build is 300,000. And they typically sell for 200,000.
Right, so she
So
needs
there's like
150 to 200,000 of extra money to make it happen to be affordable to them.
And my sense from my conversations with Carolyn was that it didn't all have to come from us. That-
No.
that they, you know,
They've got a
they've
lot
got
of
other
other
options,
resources.
so that,
Right.
you know, it might very well be that 50 from the
Yeah.
town and the piece of land,
Yeah.
Right, which,
you know, is enough
Well,
to
and
swing the
we
deal.
could structure it, again, like we did for Horseshoe Pond, is that it's up to, with the idea that that they will still try to get grants and other stuff, because any money they don't spend on this is money that's gonna be available for the next project,
Yep.
so.
Yes.
Kind of just to get the conversation started.
Get the conversation started.
And kind of to get the project started.
Right, and lets her do some side fundraising too, saying, look, the town is serious about this, they're putting some money into it, so.
Yeah.
So October, we should try to structure something to get out of the meeting.
we should figure out what our buckets are,
Well,
or at least a bucket that we can ask the town to put some money in.
right, I mean, I think we're talking, look, if I hear is something that's like up to $200,000 from CPA for, you know, a Habitat for Humanity type of project, where the homeowner does some sweat equity into the building of the property. Doesn't mean it has to be our only one.
Exactly.
But that could get us started, and that is the fund that comes out of CPA, which is where that article came from. And we still would have the other 450 to 600,000 we have in the other pools that we can vote on ourselves that don't require a town meeting vote.
Which could be first-time home buyer.
It could be
Yeah.
first
Or
time
by
buyer.
assistance, or by,
First time.
or
Or
40
or-
preservation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
preservation.
What did you,
Well,
Right, we,
to save it there, to,
To even like, what was the cheap
to
one?
step
Right.
in, to intervene, intervention,
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
saving.
yeah, saving properties that are
things.
currently 40B, and we haven't even really circled back around yet to,
Do
like-
we, I mean, just curious, do we have like the authority to perhaps maybe like buy a property that's like been sitting in the market for quite a bit and just like turn it into 40B and put it into that requirement?
Yes, but they don't really exist.
I was just curious, cause I
That
think.
we know of, like,
you know,
they
we got
looked
some
at
neighbors, so
one.
it's been on the market a
no,
while.
it's not that, it's sold.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, Henry Wheeler's is sold.
To whom?
I don't know. They're living in a
Not
camper
to
on the
you.
property.
I know there's the new people.
I
The
don't
new
know.
people are living on the camper, or I thought that was the
Okay,
Wheelers living
so-
in the camper.
It's
So
a tiny home.
We don't
the
need to do
property
this during
sold-
meeting.
Tiny
the-
home.
The property sold,
Not a
and there are
camper.
people living in a camper on the property. I do not know if they are caretaker or owner or.
Otherwise.
or otherwise.
I did not realize that. I had not heard that had been sold. Okay.
No, I was just curious, cause I know like for example with like Cambridge, they started doing that, they started to like buy condos and making them affordable and.
And
bringing them
love
to
it,
market.
yeah.
If
there's so little on the
There's so little.
market.
Yeah, that things don't stay on the
and-
market long
Although
this
with the
time.
rise in interest rates,
Yeah,
the market may
Yeah.
change a little bit.
But what if we look at like properties that are like, people, what is it, people that haven't paid taxes for?
Well, that's,
The tax
that's tax
title.
title, that's
Yeah,
tax
tax
title,
title,
no,
yeah,
we-
like
yeah,
that's-
yeah, I-
that's where
I-
we'd like to start.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then maybe
which
kinda-
we have some form of a list that we.
I do have
we
some form of
do.
list, and I
So
started.
one of them is this
I-
one.
Well, right, but I could, I'll do another run at narrowing down the list, and worst case, I can send out the list, because I at least know what town property, like this building,
You know
the
that
school
this
and
is
others.
not on.
That the ones, because there was a column that said dedicated to conservation, so I was trying to figure out which one of those are just, like Denny said, this would make great conservation land, and which ones really are like Horseshoe Pond, or 40 Caves, or.
I mean, my
or-
sense is that there's 3 or 4 pieces that we said, don't assign these to conservation. It's vacant land and it's potentially a site for a affordable unit. So, you know, if the town were to release the land to you guys, then it's a question of saying to Habitat, we've got the land and we've got this pool of money. We'd like to spend a reasonable amount of it, but not an excessive amount.
Do we, I mean, do we have any that have like been perk tested or
That's the, you know,
any of?
So, I
That's
think,
part of what I think Habitat will help us with,
So-
is,
so like the deadline for getting submission is in October, right?
so
Yeah, the
you,
end
It's
of
a
October.
placeholder.
Placeholder,
Right.
yeah.
You
So-
need-
I think
you
November
need to come to
first.
November first,
CPA
okay.
by
What's that?
November 1st with,
Yeah.
you know, a proposal.
Mhm.
But we're not gonna have a hard time if you flesh that out through some meetings that we have in November, December, and even January, cause it just needs to be cleaned up to the point where we can submit it to the warrant for town
Yeah.
meeting by mid-February.
Should we plan on having a joint meeting at some point?
That's what we talked about.
Yeah,
yeah.
like,
CPA
but
said, you know, probably.
November? Like, I don't know, when do you guys normally meet?
We meet, well, we've got two meetings a month scheduled, but we usually abandon one. But we just, I mean, we just did it that way so that if projects did come in, we'd have an assigned date. So November would be great because that's generally when we wanna sit down with anybody that's a candidate for a project.
Alright.
There is a column in the town parcel report that does say vacant tax title treasurer. I bet those are all the ones that qualify, because I'm looking at where I know addresses,
And
you know, approved, public safety, you know, conservation, vacant conservation, but vacant tax title.
Yeah,
Sadly, it's like, you know, it's book 26, you know, what is it? Map, book, and lot, and then the street, but not necessarily the street number,
But does it, I mean,
so just open up the assessor's maps
Yeah,
and,
and
The
and
Should I-
GIS
yeah.
will,
they'll give you you'll get the map in
Right,
blocks.
and some of them, because they're vacant, might not have a house number on them because it's a
Yeah.
vacant land, there's
Doesn't
never
have
been a
enough-
house.
it's never
been
Right.
assigned,
Right, it's
yeah.
not been assigned.
I mean, my sense is that there's a parcel on Marlboro Road or the corner of Marlboro and Dudley or something like that, there may be one on Baker, there may be one on Allen.
Yeah, there's several on Dudley.
There's a bunch of small ones on Dudley that might not be suitable
Right, I was
for-
gonna say, cause it also tells me what the land is
Acreages.
assessed at.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if it's assessed at $1,100,
Yeah.
then the odds that it is big enough to build something on is probably.
Yeah, on Dudley, there's a number of small little pieces, but there are a couple that are more sizable that, you know, again, the question is, will they perk and that sort of thing.
Right.
But there's, I mean, all you need is a couple.
Yep,
You know, if you had 2, that would keep you busy, you know, with Habitat for the
Right.
next, 4 years probably.
Right,
So,
right.
you know,
okay. I'll sort this, I'll do all the ones that say vacant and tax title, and then I'll also do them by assessed value, and at least remove the ones that, you know, if they're less than $5,000, there's nowhere they're buildable. Probably if they're less than 10,000, there's probably nowhere they're buildable, but we'll see what that gets us down to.
potentially if the parcels are actually, or, I mean, depending on where they're located on
Yeah.
Dudley, if they're, you know, close enough to each other
Right.
to, you know.
Well, and so I'll at least do that first, and then I might not try to do further, I'll send it out to this group, you, and Habitat, and then we can, because then each one of us
Take
can
a
spend some
drive.
time looking at, like,
Oh, I'll definitely
yeah.
Yeah.
check them out.
And then
Yeah.
from there, we can like bounce back and
Right.
we create like a little proposal.
Narrow it
start
down a
with.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alright.
and then kind of go from there by November 1st.
Right, and if it's vacant, if the town owns it, it still takes town meeting to sell it to somebody else. The town can't sell land without town meeting approval.
They need town meeting approval to transfer it, correct?
Right, but again, that warrant doesn't open until early February, and so we have some time to find the specific land.
Right.
So if the next meeting, we really like figure out a dollar amount and a tiny bit of structure on something to send over to CPA, and then in, November, December, really work this list to see if there's a parcel we think could work.
Maybe what we can do is perhaps like find a range about like the dollar values and stuff,
Mhm.
just to kind of work out like rough
Yep.
estimates, so that we just have like a good like proposal to send to the CPA and then
Yep.
obviously go from there, yeah.
Because after it gets to CPA, we'll have a couple months to
Yeah.
put it. I have seen some warrant articles and other stuff that gets to even February that is still like, well, even the 72 Carter wasn't fully fleshed out
Friends.
as early on either.
This will be a new
Horseshoe
process
Pond,
for
we
me,
will-
Yeah.
we will
Oh, you've
work
never
on
done
it.
this before?
Right.
No. So
Horseshoe Pond, you
I'm
work out up until the last
interested
minute, yeah.
in
Yeah,
ignorance.
I mean, when the warrant was gonna be printed and sent
Yeah.
out, we were trying to negotiate with town council as to what the text was actually gonna be, so.
Right.
I mean, that's not ideal, and it
No,
wouldn't
it's
have to,
never
and
ideal.
these
Select
are,
board hates it.
what you're talking about isn't complex like
No,
that
no.
anyway, so, yeah.
No, that was 4 parcels, 100+ acres.
Yeah.
It was funding sources from 8 different places. Town wasn't gonna, with an intermediary to own it because that was the way you could legally make it all work. And-
The other thing that I was thinking about, the website,
Yep,
I don't know that at all.
I can
in
try,
your-
I'm not the most tech savvy person, I can try.
I mean, that might be a good place to say, we're currently seeking parcels to partner in building a,
Maybe kind of like.
I don't know.
yeah.
Well, whatever.
yeah, there's not a lot we can do with the website, I thought, at the moment either.
Oh,
Well, I know that the town has engaged someone to redo the website from top to bottom. It's actually beginning to is soliciting ideas on like, what would make this a more useful website. And I think
so
some
we
of
can develop our content and have it ready to go, so when somebody asks us, we can hand
Yeah.
it to them?
Well, and I think some of it is going to be something that is easier for non-tech people to maintain the content of.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
I know that even for like my own offices, the intranet, trying to get it so departments can maintain their own pages and
Right.
not have to send it into the tech department every time you want to like change someone's name or phone number on it, and-
But, yeah, but making it clear that, hey, if you're thinking about
Right.
selling and moving on or whatever, reach out if you're interested in giving back to town or whatever,
Right,
whatever.
well, and you can give back to the town without taking a giant economic
Yeah,
hit.
you need some cash now, here, we can give you cash now, and in return, you're gonna make this an in perpetuity 40B,
Yeah,
or something, reverse mortgage,
yeah,
thing, right? I don't know, making stuff up, I don't know if that's possible, but.
I'm thinking about
Right?
it, I don't know.
But whatever, but we should do that, and then the other thing I was thinking about being potentially on that website, right? We wanna
Yeah.
drive people to that website, but all of just the links out to all of the resources. There are so many programs, and it's a little hard to figure out where to put our money that isn't duplicating
Right,
things
right.
other people are doing. So potentially it's a good resource for us to know what's out there. We talked about the Mass Saves,
right.
and help, and,
Right.
kind of mini grants for that, but they've got a lot of programs.
Yeah.
And so if you don't make enough, you just go into this bin and they give you more money.
I
and
agree.
So, so figuring out what the resources are, that we're pointing people to, and then helping us identify those gaps where we
Right.
can potentially be most useful.
I wasn't sure, but it almost seemed that some towns followed up their initial approval of their housing trust with additional materials that they took to town meeting for approval that further fleshed out their procedures or authority or whatever, so that might be something that Jasifa could help you with, because it wasn't clear to me, but it was evident that towns did come back, that like the Housing Trust would come back with articles for a warrant that dealt with housekeeping issues, and I don't know if I was mistaken by interpreting it that way or whether that's actually the case, but it seemed like that might be something you'd want to think about for town meeting if it's necessary.
Were any of y'all at the Mass Housing Partnership training on last Thursday? Yeah.
I was half listening.
I
I was working.
Yeah. I know Lisa was there, so I was like, oh good, she'll take notes, and then of course she's not
Right,
here.
right.
But I felt the middle session was the one that I found most, I felt like we'd heard the stuff from the third
Agreed.
one, and I skipped the first one, because I'm like, we're already set up. So like the second one, but the stuff they talked about in terms of building a mission and goals, I think is a piece. They pointed out some things that were publicly available, right, on some towns' websites and stuff, but they didn't have any tiny towns, right?
Yeah, we don't
And so,
compare to a lot of
You
it.
know, I'm really interested in, and potentially you can help us find, you know, missions and goal statements
For
for,
like the
for-
website to
well,
add in.
right, but things that
Yeah,
are,
with
you know,
like-
towns like us, or more like us, because
Maybe
we don't
like-
care what Worcester's is.
Yeah, maybe I
I
don't know
think-
like who's doing like the website, but maybe creating like a document with like the mission statement,
Yeah.
contact, and then going ahead with like these are the resources.
Yeah.
Just so we have like a draft.
I think a good definition of affordable
Yeah.
be
That's,
key.
yes,
because
Because it scares
even
people.
myself, there's a big difference between, you know, low income, Section 8,
Mhm.
and affordable, and
Yeah.
just a lot of the
Like-
terms.
Yeah. 'Cause-
Smart growth,
Yeah.
you know, that is an acronym,
Mhm.
apparently, I found out.
We did
At the meeting?
The meeting?
So, I think education is
Yeah.
very important at
Yeah,
this
that's
point.
what I'm also hearing from like the other towns as well.
Oh, excellent. Good.
Yeah, because they're all just
Especially when you're
saying,
talking
like,
about increasing density
Yeah.
per se.
because people get scared and then they're like, okay, I don't want to have affordable housing, but then affordable housing is like 80% AMI, which is what a lot of people make under the threshold.
Well, we
Is it
could list the
yeah.
current,
AMI.
What is the
Exactly.
current AMI?
which is comparable to Cambridge. It's
Which is
150.
56 or
yeah,
something.
something,
like
yeah,
that.
so what that number is and.
So, I mean, there's some eye openers, some things
Yeah,
that
'cause
could
when-
be.
Sorry to cut you off when that like chart is shown. People are like, oh, I follow that AMI, and that's what it is. But affordable.
I mean, even
housing-
some bullet
yeah.
pointed facts like that.
Yeah.
Start a conversation and maybe could be very, very helpful.
Yeah, and like clarify like the education around Section 8 and how that's a related but a different beast,
Program, yeah.
right? You know, all these different programs and how what we do kind of fits into all of this, which goes back to we have to figure out as a community
Yeah.
what all these different entities are doing
Yeah.
and make sure our websites reflect
And the
that.
difference between 40B, you know,
The types of 40B.
the big housing down at the Rotary, the comprehensive permits, and what we're doing to sort of mitigate that, actually. And with help, that could be easier.
That sounds solid. Yeah, I think a lot of the other, I mean, I know Grafton's asking for the same thing. And then I think with their production plan, they're asking for, I mean, I think what's her name? They have a consultant that's doing it, but she has like, I think their plan's like over 200 pages long.
Oh.
So they're like,
Wow.
they're like, who's gonna read through all this besides the people in the housing trust? Can we make like a one-page like brochure, so if someone wants to read and understand it, they get the nitty-gritty of
Right.
it and kind of go from there as an example. So
Yeah.
maybe in the website we can put something like that. Here are some bullet points. I know like Mendon did like a story
Like a
map.
condensed version
Yeah, like,
of it.
exactly. Like a condensed version. If you want to read further, here's our.
Yeah, here's the link to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
Because,
here's
I mean,
what you actually want to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can do something like that. Absolutely.
The people reading it may already know the history of Berlin and where we're located and all the,
Yes.
the really
The first
Never
six
basic.
pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Like,
What's changing?
Like,
Where are we going?
This is kind of what's kind of important to kind of look at, and like what's the visionary in that as an example. so
Yeah,
to
I love
speak.
that
Yeah,
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do something like that. Yeah.
The housing production plan was one thing that Emily worked on, and she's also done a chapter for the master plan, which is significantly condensed from the housing production plan.
Yeah,
So-
I like helped her in that.
So you've
That-
got access to that, but I
Yeah.
mean, if,
I like condensed it down to like 21 pages.
So where is that found?
you've got it, right?
Yeah, I think I have the master plan, and then I have a condensed version that I've done for Emily and then sent it back, so I can send that to you.
Perfect, that
Yeah.
would be
If you guys
really,
wanna
that would
see
be,
Love to
yeah,
see
yeah,
that.
yeah,
If you
yeah.
guys wanna see that, and then we can kind of maybe take some stuff from there and then add that in the website, which would be awesome. Do like a little one pager for whoever's, yeah, or someone who's like looking to live in Berlin, who's like in that 80% AMI threshold,
Right.
and this is what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have to do more work on, you know, when we talk about, you know, some programs right up to 110% can count in your affordable thing.
Exactly.
What the ladder looks like, right, and the chunks of the ladder we're most interested in making sure we've got representation in our housing stock for.
I love how you guys are so, I don't know if you're progressive, but
Right.
I love it.
I thought you were gonna say perfect.
It's like awesome. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's great.
Any new information or out of the mall lady?
I'm all in.
So Solomon Pond Mall
Right.
Yeah.
is, part of it is us.
Right.
At any rate, and they appear to be interested in at least talking about.
2 owners ago was interested in, but it's changed hands a couple of times. It's
Right.
gone through bankruptcy now at this point. Now, Lisa, who's the general manager. over
General
there,
manager person.
When the current receivership partner went to the new receivership partner, they kept her as an employee. And so
Yeah.
she changed who gets her paycheck, but she's still there, which allows some continuity.
Right.
And I've not had a chance to follow up with her on like how seriously that might be. It would take some changing of rules and laws to allow it to have some housing component to it, but it has the Sears as an empty space and turning that into something.
So,
One
like
point
you-
they were talking about taking even a corner of that whole corner of the mall and turning it something big and moving tenants, increasing the density of tenants further down the hallways, so even where Payless and other, it's not Payless, whatever the shoe store is called.
So, the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission did the study for Donald Lynch Boulevard for Marlboro, and in that, they looked at that component of Solomon Pond Mall and argued that housing was a logical direction to travel in. So when we talked to the consultants before this last change, they were eager to have the town consider some modification to the overlay. And we said, you know, we'd be happy to be proactive about that and get language in there that would help them move in that direction if that's the direction they wanted to go. And we had a forum as part of the housing production plan in the center of town, in the town hall one night, and had people participate in that meeting when we threw out the idea of housing to be a component at the Solomon Pond Mall. People were, they were positive about that. I mean, that was an option that they looked at and said, no, that makes sense. It's a logical place to put housing. So in their conversations with us, the Solomon, Liz and the Solomon Pond crew, they were really talking about maybe, you'd rip down Sears, you'd look at extending the permissible building area, the pad where Jordan's was gonna go, which never happened, between Regal and Sears.
Right.
There's a buildable area there that never got built. But we could modify the permissible building area through a zoning change at town meeting, with it, and then that would allow a housing component perhaps to go in that back side. So, again, that's something to play with, because you'd assume they'd be the majority might be rentals, again, if they get the 25% affordable component, then the whole gang counts. If the big cities east of us play that game, we might as well too. It's not fair, but what the hell?
So that area that you're speaking of where Jordan's would go, or
Would have gone.
had proposed to go, that's Berlin right there?
Mm.
Yeah.
With Sears.
So Sears is all Berlin, Regal's all Berlin, and the pad that was permissible building area is all Berlin. And the concourse down to Penny's, because a corner of Penny's is in Berlin too. But then Macy's and the majority of Penny's are Marlboro.
Mhm.
The food cart is mostly
All
Marlboro.
Marlboro, yeah.
They get the meals tax.
But
TGI
that
Fridays
sounds
is
like
Berlin.
it's very far away on the horizon.
Yeah, very far away.
Yeah.
It is them spitballing sort of ways to keep it a viable property for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's another place where,
Mhm.
going back to that agility,
Right,
right?
right.
If they come to us and are like, hey, we wanna do this.
Right.
You know, what can the town do? And
Mhm.
obviously, we can fix ours, potentially, we can fix, you know, we could adapt zoning.
Right.
And, you know, and say, you know, here's some seed money, we're excited, go make this happen, and, you know, kind of thing, sorting out our funds, so we have that available, and we don't have to be like, yeah, in 5 months, we can go to town meeting and ask for, and ask for some more.
Well, that's what I got out of the middle seminar
Mhm.
the other day, was that one of the, I have to look at my notes,
Oh,
but
yeah.
which town it was, the first thing that they did when they finalized the trust was went to town meeting and asked for the money in their hands so that they could be nimble, to work with it, because that is the purpose.
Yeah.
So, that makes sense. Well, good.
Yeah, so those are some of the things.
So by Friday, you'll
Christmas
have
love.
like construction started.
I think my priority that I'm looking at
Right.
would definitely be like start like the proposal,
Right.
because that deadline is coming
Mhm.
soon as far as what I've
Yep.
understood.
Mhm.
And then in the meantime, I definitely wanna start working on like the content for like the website and everything, cause who wants to read through like over 100 pages of?
Right.
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
a start to it,
Mm-hmm.
and
then-
even if it's being
Also the
reworked,
same, yeah.
then at least we'll have
A placeholder.
what we want on there when they're ready.
Yeah, perfect.
And then adding those 10 units isn't,
Right.
Perfect.
we have time on that.
Yeah.
And you'll let us know, like, what November meeting might work for,
Mm.
I mean, I guess, cause normally our November meeting would fall over Thanksgiving.
Right.
Or, yeah, the Wednesday of Thanksgiving.
Right,
And
which
that
we're-
seems, we wouldn't
we
do, but
wouldn't do that,
potentially
so-
if there's another,
Right.
we could meet with them in November and call that.
Combine it.
Combine it, yeah.
I like that. What,
Yeah, we have a hearing for our preservation plan in November, but I don't think that hearing's gonna take a lot of time, so that might very well, I think that's the 13th of November.
That's a
So-
Monday night?
What is it?
Monday, it's a Monday? You all normally meet on Mondays?
Yeah, that didn't sound right.
Tuesdays, I think.
We do Tuesdays and Wednesdays usually.
Usually, a lot of the town meetings are Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
So the 14th of November is a Tuesday?
Yep,
Yeah, so it's probably the 14th.
Yeah.
Is that the second Tuesday?
yep.
No, so it's not the 14th, it's gonna be the 21st, I think.
So the Monday of Thanksgiving week.
The 21st is
Sorry, the
Monday?
Tuesday, the 21st is a Tuesday, it's the
Yeah,
Tuesday
it's
of
probably
Thanksgiving.
that one, because, I think,
It's fine by me.
Cause even the one day earlier.
I'll let you know.
be-
Yeah.
could-
Everyone's cooking Wednesday
everyone's cooking.
night.
Wednesday we're busy.
Wednesday's a cooking night.
Maureen and I meet tomorrow, so we'll talk about that.
But if you need more time for the hearing, obviously.
No,
we
the
can-
hearings, I mean, no one is gonna make any comments about the plan, I don't think. They usually don't. If you're there, you might. You might say, wow, what a great plan.
Well, I can say that without being there.
Yeah, but this way you will be there.
This is true, absolutely, totally true.
We meet remotely still.
Yep.
Oh, okay, we can do that.
Yeah.
Is that the meeting that I was in before?
Yeah.
That's another
Oh,
meeting, yeah.
so it's remote. I'd be sitting here.
Yeah, I don't know why, but planning board and CPA are still doing remote.
And you're allowed to.
And,
I think
um,
more should.
And we get more participation being remote
Mhm.
than we do when we're sitting here in the
Select
room.
board had more participation when we were remote than we do
Yeah,
when
well,
we're.
I was listening the other night when you asked me to raise my hand, but I had too much chaos around me to be able to.
well, it is fun, cause you look and you say, okay, who are the participants? And I say, oh, Kate's here.
Yeah.
Kate, what the hell are you doing? Say something.
And then you
Like you really don't want to be a part of what's happening over here.
I'm listening and I have like 2 other screens open.
Yeah, so anyhow,
But no, I mean,
it is interesting.
working remotely still is beneficial for us. And then if some engineer's got a plan that they wanna present and they live in Holden or something like that, and we're running 20 minutes late, and they come in to a meeting in public,
Yeah.
you know, they're hanging around, and then they gotta
Yeah.
drive home, and instead they just
Yep.
pop their plan up on the screen, we look at it and say, that's fine with us.
I do have a hard time seeing the screens with the plans
Yeah,
in it,
you
though.
wanna
That, yeah,
It's
that's
a
my
large-
only.
right.
I like when they,
reservation
like,
about
give the
that.
plan ahead of time, so you can kind of scan through it
Right.
and be like, these are the 3 pages we're gonna focus on instead of the whole thing. Oops.
Nice.
Can I get everybody's email, if that's okay,
Yeah.
or something, or are you gonna?
I did it, I emailed out the list of available properties.
Yes, you
that
just
in-
did?
No, I
Oh, okay.
just did, that
Yeah.
included the group of us, Lisa
Perfect.
and you.
Perfect.
And so that will get you all of our email
Perfect.
addresses.
Love that, okay, awesome.
Cool.
Send that to me too, would you?
Yeah, I did only the ones that did textile and then removed all the ones that had a valuation less than 100,000. But it dropped from like 100 to 60 to 40 to 10 were like the next 3. And so it drops, and then they're all like 5,000 or 1,100. Those are the, size of this table properties that are
Right.
out there that wouldn't be developable. So I think it's only those that are developable. But yeah, I mean, it exists on my computer now at this point. Sending it out to someone else is pretty easy to do.
What's PID? PID and use code, those are columns? Are
Those
they
are columns
anything?
are on the report that
Okay, there's, you don't know what they mean, okay, that's fine.
There's a table somewhere.
There's a table somewhere, yeah.
I'll find it.
Well, I think like right after our last meeting, or maybe because I have the laptop at the meeting, I just emailed over to Chris and like, what does it take to get one of those? And Chris like, oh, I just happened to ask the treasurer for the list like 2 days ago. Let me find it on my computer and get it over to you. So it.
Timing's everything.
Oh, maybe
Timing
that's,
is
maybe that's parcel ID or
Yeah,
something.
parcel ID, yeah.
Parcel ID, yeah,
It's
use
like a
code.
map
Yeah.
designation.
Okay. So 1, 2, yeah, so there are 4 on this list that are not co-owned by anybody, like
Right.
that aren't conservation.
Right, it says co-owned by conservation, but they're still tax titles, so it could be there. Thought they could be
They could
from
put it-
conservation, but have
put their
not been
thumb on
formally,
the-
right.
thumb
Because
on
that
the
was one of the
scale.
things you can do in tax titles, you don't actually have to go for a conservation easement on it because it's owned by the town, no one's gonna develop it.
Right.
But it was thinking that those are probably ones they were thinking at one point might be better as conservation than otherwise. Is that what we have for tonight?
Okay. I get on this and then
Yep.
look at things.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I gotta say, you guys have been the most organized in telling me these are the tasks that I need from you.
Yeah, see? That's There are some that the advantage of being a smaller town than like having a giant bureaucause that
Yeah.
needs like 6 people to
Oh my
approve
god,
things. and-
Cambridge's town meeting,
Right.
nothing gets done.
Right.
Nothing gets done. Because everybody has an opinion
Yeah.
on this is what it is. I'm like, oh my god. Let's go for hours.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
Yes, motion to adjourn, please.
I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.